I probably spend just as much time working out as I do climbing. If I wasn't a climber, I would still work out because I simply love the feeling of having a strong body. When I'm feeling fit and strong, it is also easier to keep my mental health in good shape too. But since my goals are climbing related, I adapt my training so that it can help me towards becoming a stronger climber in the long run and climb a 7A outdoors in the next few months. In this 4-month block, I focused on strengthening my fingers, campusing, working towards the front lever, and the one-arm pull-up. You might be thinking, what on earth is she on about? Surely you don't need to be able to do a one-arm pull-up to do a 7A. And you are absolutely right, you don't. There are lots of climbers who would not be able to do weighted pull-ups with 2 hands, but can climb that grade comfortably. This is because their technique is probably much better than mine. But don't worry, I am working on that. But having said that, being strong never hurt anyone, and ultimately my climbing goals are higher than a 7A, and they will require a lot of strength. So for now, this kind of training is here to stay. Plus, wouldn't it be cool to just be able to do this? If nothing, it might help if I ever find myself in trouble on an E9. In my testing a few weeks before I started this plan, I managed to do 28 kilos on a single rep with both hands. I also found out that I was very weak in one-arm hangs, so I thought it was a good time to start training with one arm. I started using a resistance band. I would measure the distance of my hand from the bar. The higher you go with your arm, the easier it is. You can progress to a different resistance band or move your hand lower down. I found this to be really easy and quick, and a setup that can be used easily in any climbing wall or if you've got a pull-up bar at home. A pulley system is a lot more accurate, but also a lot more faff. I have a workout area in our spare room. I like to also lovingly refer to it as the pain cave.
Oh my god!
Having your own space definitely makes it easier to set up a pulley without having to move it all the time. Although most climbing walls will have a facility like this in their training area. The reason why I chose to do the pulley rather than the resistance band was so I could track the weight and progress exactly. If you're looking to start on this kind of training, my advice would be to decide based on your goals and training history. Making things as easy as possible will mean that you are more likely to do workouts when you have one of those days or you're just not that into training. You need to balance this with accuracy. If you're new to climbing, you need to focus on just keeping at it. If you're experienced, you have to put a lot more effort to get any kind of small gains, and that is when you need all of the accuracy you can get. I would always warm up doing scapular pull-ups. This was really good for my shoulder mobility and strength. Once again, my left hand was so much weaker than my right. I ended up going with the pace of my weaker arm so that I don't get any more imbalance. I would do 3 reps and 3 sets and have at least 3 minutes recovery. I also started doing some lock-offs. I could only do this session once a week as I was so sore afterwards I needed a rest day. I would also train both pull-ups and chin-ups. I progressed from the bands and started somewhere around 12 kilos of weight taken off from the left arm. At the beginning, I needed at least half a minute between my reps. Over the training cycle, I worked up to almost taking 7.5 kilos of resistance, which was a really good progress. I needed about 8 kilos of resistance with my right hand to start with. Like I said, I trained based on the weaker arm, so I didn't even test the right at the end. Just to point out, results would be different if I used a thinner rope. My weight also stayed the same, around 56 kilos the whole cycle. The second focus in my strength training was to work towards the front lever. I have been following a lattice video which is absolutely brilliant. I will put it in the description below. It outlines different stages of the front lever training and gives you exactly the exercises that you need. I was working through the stage 1 from early September and found it hard, but slowly progressed. L-sits were so difficult and I struggled to hold it for 10 seconds. After a couple of months, I progressed to being able to comfortably hold a position for like 40 seconds, which felt really good. So in this training cycle, I entered the new phase. The exercises changed, which kept it really exciting. I stuck to doing these once a week with a break during a deload week, roughly every 5 weeks. I could see a definite improvement in all of the exercises, and I felt that I completed the phase in this training cycle. I can't do the front lever yet, and it is definitely a long-term project. My core is so much stronger already though, and I feel like I'm on the way towards the front lever, slowly but surely. Probably the most important aspect of my strength training in relation to where I'm at my climbing is finger strength. By this point, I have been fingerboarding on a regular basis for a couple of months. My history with working on my fingers before this point consisted of a few months during lockdown, and a few years before that I also had a go briefly. I wouldn't say I ever had a consistent routine, and it was more trying it out without measuring my progress. I started doing max hangs as I found them so much more enjoyable than repeaters. There are different opinions about which ones are better, and I went with the ones that are more fun, because more fun equals more likely to stick to something. The number one priority was to not get injured and establish a consistent routine. So once a week I decided to do 10-second hangs with 3 minutes rest in between, 4 sets in total, both drag and half crimp. Here are my progress results. Half crimp, I started in this cycle with 110% of my body weight, and in 2.5 months managed to add additional 20 kilos, which is about 135% of my body weight. Interestingly, I started stronger in the drag with 117% of my body weight and ended up at 128%. I think the reason why drag didn't progress as fast was because I always did it after half crimp, and I think my fingers were a little bit fatigued. I wanted to focus on strengthening my half crimp, so I continued it in this way. I don't have any other stats to benchmark yet, as this is my first cycle, but I think that's a really good progress. I definitely had some newbie gains. I also experimented with grippers. I used them once a week for about 2.5 months and found almost no progress. I assume that once a week is just not enough to get better. I know some people swear by them, but I'm just not a fan, so I need to come up with a better way to train my pinch. I also focused a lot on campusing in this training period, which of course trains power and not strength. I made a separate video focusing on just that aspect if you're interested in the details. The reason why I mention it here is that you might have noticed a pattern in my workouts, and I include campusing in this as well. Most training protocols will advise to hit a target area 2 to 3 times per week to see benefits. Doing all of these sessions that I outlined several times per week, on top of climbing outside and indoor climbing as well, is just too much. So instead, I guess I wanted to make improvements across the board rather than focusing on 1 or 2 areas more intensively. I also get bored easily. I don't like to repeat sessions in a week. I don't mind working the same muscle group, but I like to change it up each day. I guess where I'm at with my climbing, I feel like I can benefit from doing variety. Other than the pinch grip, I progressed in all areas, which I guess goes to show that it is working. Maybe I would have progressed more if I concentrated on a certain area at different times. Only a very experienced coach would be able to give me an answer, and I feel like we could debate this for hours. What I do know for certain is that I enjoy the process and I feel stronger. But like I said at the beginning, the training plan needs to relate to the climbing goals. So the question is, Did my training plan work for the goals that I set?